Okay, so we're going to switch over to our diversity panel. We're collating the scores for judging, so you'll have to wait till the very end to find out who wins. We have Jill Layfield, former CEO of Backcountry, and I've got to know Jill over the years, and we're just grateful to have her here. She's has time for us now, so we're so excited. But she's going to jump into something really quick, I know. But she's built a women's leadership coalition within her own organization and seen really great success. And so I've just watched Jill, and the power of having women in leadership and just leadership is fantastic. So I'm going to allow her to introduce our great panelists, but just briefly, we've got Denise Lala from eBay, Allison Lutmeyer from Adobe, who also helped pull this event together for us. Thank you, Allison. You're amazing. And Diane Rivera from Goldman Sachs. So I'm going to turn the panel over to them. We're going to go until noon, and then we'll announce the winners. Thanks.
Somebody have a time check?
About 30 minutes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for staying to the end. Hopefully, this is the most exciting panel so far today.
Great.
It's up to us, guys.
Okay.
Let's go. Let's bring the good tips and tricks for everyone. So I think to get started, I want to let each of you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about your story. And as we discussed, we had a quick call yesterday to talk about today's panel. Explain why you're part of the panel today, and maybe give a quick overview of your company's diversity programs.
Great. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Denise Lala. Thank you for having me. I work at eBay, and I'm responsible for customer service for North America and for Europe. I've been at eBay almost, I don't know exactly the date, but almost 4 years this week. So we have a great 1 month sabbatical next year, so I'm on the countdown, 80% there. And so diversity and inclusion has been important throughout my career. I've actually gotten to lead the diversity network at Barclays in London. I've been a part of it at Capital One in Virginia, and then a part of it within eBay here in Salt Lake. We really started to focus on women first about 5 years ago. We've actually doubled the number of women in leadership positions. We're at 30%. We just split from PayPal. So our stats are combined still, what we released last year. We have about a 50-50 employee base, men and women, and then our technology group is 24% women.
Okay, great. I'm Allison Lutmeyer. My day job here is I lead our customer advisory board, working with executives around the world to lead our product strategy. My side job is I lead our diversity leadership council here at Adobe. It's about it's a volunteer group of about 15 people, and we just strive to bring awareness to different aspects of women's initiatives, cultural awareness, and LGBTQ initiatives. So rely really closely on this team to be able to help us drive awareness, help us with getting more gender diversity, more diversity of thought within the company as well. Kind of an exciting statistic we had here recently is that over the last 250 hires here at Adobe, 26% of them have been women. So that's a 10% increase, which I feel is kind of driving the needle, making it move forward, and looking to increase diversity here at Adobe for sure.
And I'm Diane Rivera. I have been at Goldman Sachs actually. This year marks my 10th year there. Always in Salt Lake City. Sometimes people look at me and they're like, did you move here from New York? I'm like, nope. I moved here when I was 14, and so I feel like I'm a local person. I head talent acquisition, which is just a fancy word for recruiting, so all the recruiting for our Salt Lake City office. And that's a pretty big job because the Salt Lake City office for Goldman Sachs is actually the second largest office for Goldman across the Americas and the fourth largest across the world. So there's a lot of recruiting that we're doing. As it relates to diversity, I've always been very passionate about diversity. I myself consider myself diverse because I'm female, but I also grew up in Puerto Rico and moved here, and so I've always been very involved in our diversity efforts. Within Goldman Sachs, we have various diversity efforts for recruiting. One of them, we partner with all of our affinity networks. We have a Black network, a Hispanic, Latino network, we have Asian networks, we have a lot of different types of networks, and we partner with them in order for us to go out there and recruit. If we want to recruit diverse people, we need to make sure that we have diverse people go out and recruit with us. We also, within those networks and within human capital management, which is our HR, there are some programs that we have. One of them is obviously recruiting, but there's also programs that help develop and promote women and retain those women as well. And so there's a lot of work to be done around those areas. And specifically with technology, we have a Women in Technology group where we help sponsor women. It's important that women have sponsorship within the organization, and we help those women develop within the company. And so those have been very important initiatives within Goldman Sachs. And then the last thing that I will share with you is that we do a lot of campus recruiting. So we go out on campus, and just going and setting up a table and collecting resumes is not going to get us the diversity numbers that we need and want. We actually go out and do a lot of different types of events on campus, and we bring in every year probably close to 50%, if not a little bit higher, of women hires into Goldman Sachs every year through our campus. And when we talk about equal pay, everybody gets paid. Everybody that comes in at the campus level gets paid the same. So there's no difference in pay between men and women at those levels.
All right, so let's stay on this topic of innovative, but let's call it practical, because I think everybody here wants to take something back with them after today. So practical, innovative hiring techniques to get more women through the door, interviewing in your companies, and hopefully ultimately hired. There's got to be, I think you've just mentioned, having more representative people, women in the recruiting process. That's one clearly, right? I mean, it may seem obvious, have women in the process of recruiting and interviewing women, but there's got to be a few other things. I think we've talked about prioritized lists of priorities maybe around recruiting and retention of women. What else can you guys share? Let's start.
Okay. There's a couple of things. So one that I personally have done for many years, and I recommend everybody do, is that first of all, when you're talking to your recruiting teams, tell them that you'll only accept a diverse slate of candidates. Of course, set up a diverse slate of interviewers. But I also cover the names of all of the resumes or CVs that I get, so that I try not to be influenced by gender. We work a lot from eBay with the Clayman Institute at Stanford. And we actually have a list of words that we know that more women will use versus men will use to talk about their performance and their what they've achieved. And so trying to remove some of those unconscious bias about how women might write their resume versus men. So just a couple of tips, but look for those words.
And are you using, I know there's quite a few technology startups that are producing apps and different software to remove unconscious bias from the recruiting process, hiding names, hiding words in a resume. Are you using anything like that, or is it, I'll call it more manual at this point?
For me, it's manual. Look, there's lots of eBay people here, but I don't know of any technology we have in the company that we're using, but it's mostly manual.
Okay.
Definitely diverse interview panel, as you mentioned, Denise. Another cool thing that we just did here recently is I believe it's the women's sales, it's with our sales group. I'm just drawing a blank on the name right now. But the whole goal of this new sales initiative is to bring women into sales. And what they're doing is they're going out to different verticals, industries, looking for women who have been really excellent at selling, bringing them in, giving them a more lenient ramp-up time to help drive more women in the sales force. Definitely give them training and different things like that to help them become successful. We also look at our pipeline. The pipeline's obviously huge. We have a goal for new college hires and internships of 50-50. We want 50% gender ratio. So we've got people out at schools looking. We've got our STEAM initiative, which is like STEM, but we add art into it because it's Adobe. And we make sure that we're out working with different groups in the local area, women, like girls, trying to make sure that they're growing up and seeing the technology as a viable opportunity in their future. We also partner with Latinos in Action. We partner with the Women Unlimited group and Grace Hopper. So we're definitely out networking in other communities and other areas where like this, where women are, to make sure that you guys know that Adobe is a great place to come to, and helping the young girls see that all of us have been successful in technology, and they can be too.
I would say in addition to that, because we partner and do similar things, when we have interviews, we call them, as an example, Super Day, where we'll have 20 people come and interview. The night before, we will have a networking event. And we have found that women like to be able to come and meet who are they going to be interviewing with? What does the office look like? And having those events the night before usually helps, especially the women, to feel more comfortable the next day when they come in back to our offices and interview. They have already met that person. They feel comfortable about talking about themselves because they have already done it. They see what the office looks like, and that has yielded better numbers in our female recruiting. So I think that has been a change, a game changer for us.
Oh, that's a great
nice.
takeaway.
That's great. Could I just add something? Because when you were talking, Diana, it made me think about when I interviewed for eBay. I had a girlfriend who was already working for eBay, and I go back to wherever Kat is, where she was Catherine, I think, was talking about having a girlfriend in business, and I just, the networking kind of thing. Like, if you're going to interview somebody and you know that your company is kind of casual, then give them a heads up. I was literally in the Atlanta airport, and this girlfriend said, "Whatever you do not show up in a suit." I literally bought my interview clothes at the airport in Atlanta because I didn't want to be out of place, and I wanted to fit in. So, all those kind of helpful tips, give a girl a break,
Right. Super.
I like that.
All right, so on the flip side, we started the day, or at least when I arrived, there was a discussion around women making a pretty quick judgment on if she's going to fit in the company that she's interviewing at. And so from your perspective, what have you seen that is absolutely a deal breaker, the thing to avoid when you have a woman coming in for an interview that you want to avoid so that you don't turn her off?
I will tell you that I think, and this is obvious, but the first thing is you cannot have an all-male interview panel.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, my own interview story at Goldman, I had interviewed probably with 20 people, and probably the first 5 people were male, then the 6th person was female, and I started to feel really good about it. And then at the end, I had interviewed with a good number of women and men, but if I had interviewed with all males, it would not have been a very comfortable. I don't know if comfortable is the right word, but I probably would not have been as positive about it, and I think it's important. And I know that's a given, but I think a lot of people miss that.
Mm-hmm. And I want to turn the question a little bit and say, what should we be doing if you're interviewing to attract a woman? Because really, obviously, the diverse panel is huge. But talk to her, understand what are her needs. Is a more lenient work environment or work schedule important to her? Let her know that is a possibility. Mm-hmm. Is it making sure that she has time off when she's going to have a child, or when she has an ill parent, or whatever it is? Find out what's important to this person and make sure that they understand ways that you can alleviate any of the concerns that they have. You talked about sabbatical. We have a 4-week sabbatical after 5 years here, and then five weeks after 10 years, that type of thing. If those are things where she wants time to focus on herself, then make sure that she understands that it is possible to work and also have that ability at your workplace.
Yeah, I think those are great answers.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about measuring the impact of your recruiting efforts. Number one, I guess the question is, do you measure? And if you do measure, how do you measure? What do you measure? Who looks at the kind of results? How do you keep yourself kind of honest that you're actually having an impact when it comes to recruiting women?
I would say it's more than recruiting for us. It's we look when we do what we focal or performance management. We try and we started introducing something called the skill of observation, where it's just I observe there are 4 women on this panel. You're not really trying to pass judgment. You're just observing, and so you're looking for patterns. And so we really try in everything we do start to look for patterns. So when we have kind of the matrix, then we'd use a 9-box matrix. Are there anybody kind of gearing towards one side? Or I observe that there are more men than women. I observe tenure. I observe whatever. And so it's it allows you to start a conversation without judgment, which allows us to make, I think, better decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We do things here. We survey a lot. We do a yearly engagement, new hire, exiting individuals. We do feedback forums, focus groups. Something that came out of the focus group here in Lehigh actually was a really enhanced mother's room. It had refrigerators. It had a conference call phone in there so that she can be doing what she needs to do, but also making sure that business is getting done as well. So definitely listening to the employees, hearing what they have to say, and striving to make sure that they feel like they have what they need to be successful.
And when we talk about measuring impact, it starts with our recruiting team. We actually have a recruiter scorecard, where we keep track of all of our numbers, including diversity. Once people come in the door, we also keep track of performance. And diversity is one of the pieces of performance for everyone at the firm. It's everyone from top to bottom. What are you doing about expanding the diversity efforts within the company? And so we measure that as well. And we have employee info polls often, and we hear about, what are we doing right? Where do we not have it right? Where do we need to expand it? And because of some of that feedback that we received, we expanded our paternity leave to a month, to 4 weeks. And so those little things, just hearing, like you said, listening to what the employees are saying and making some changes so that it's actually impactful is very important.
All right, so let's switch gears to, let's assume now we've had massive success and we've recruited, 50% of our employees are women. Clearly, after we've done all that hard work and we've had that success, we want to keep women, right, in the company, and we want to hopefully see them be promoted within and move into leadership roles. So let's talk about career development and what you have seen as the most impactful. There was, again, earlier discussions around, obviously, we've all seen the stats, women not making as much as men, pay inequality, women not asking for what is due to them or what they really want. So how do we kind of shepherd women in terms of their career within our businesses?
Yeah, for us, it starts with mentoring. We have a lot of our tech leaders in the room, and we do a lot of mentoring both here and in San Jose and across all of our sites. Really, we're a global company, and I think one of the things when I talk to our tech groups, they talk about really ensuring that we do come in at comp ratios of 100%, because you might be hiring someone who didn't ask for the money or didn't ask for or wasn't paid what they were due, and so we can't just kind of say, oh, but you were making this and now you'll make that. We really want to try and ensure that we're paying fairly, so kind of ignoring the past, if you will, but just pay on performance. And then also flexibility. I think everybody today has mentioned flexibility being so key, and ensuring that it's all about results, but letting you be really flexible to deliver as you can.
Mm-hmm. Definitely the growth of our employees is critical here. I mentioned earlier that we partner with Women Unlimited, so we definitely send people through the lead and team programs with Women Unlimited. Grace Hopper also is another thing. We also have a really nice benefit of college reimbursement too, tuition reimbursement that is quite nice. So we definitely want people to go and advance their education, their opportunities, to be able to improve and stay where they are, and then also give them ability to switch teams. We have job rotations here at Adobe as well, so it gives you the opportunity to go try out a different area of the business that maybe you weren't familiar with before, to see if that might be something you want to do. And then last, Brad mentioned this morning that Joy Durling was behind a Women Shadow and Leadership program that we just kicked off here. So that's a mentoring program, very similar, that we've got a wait list to get into it at this point in time. So that's a really good position to be in. Hopefully we can get more executives included so we can get more people through that program as well.
I would say mentoring and sponsorship are important. In addition to that, we have what we call Goldman Sachs University, where we teach. It's an opportunity for all of our employees to come and either self-teach, self-learn, or there's actually classroom type of learning that they can do. And the goal is that we're going to teach the women that come into Goldman Sachs the skills that they need to one day be the CEO if they want to. Now, if along the way they decide to take a break, work, take more flexible time, leave altogether and become a stay-at-home mom, whatever it is that you want to do, it's up to you. But when you come in the door and you're that analyst, our goal is to teach you and to teach you the business of Goldman Sachs in order for you to grow. Because I think too many times we spend time teaching women leadership and assertiveness and things like that. All of that is very important, but you also have to teach them the business that they're running so that they can be in that boardroom with other men and women and actually talk shop. And if you can't do that, it's going to be really hard for you to run an organization. So we want to make sure that we're teaching you the businesses, and like that you can go out there and be a leader.
I think just one other thing to add, because in addition to a lot of the same types of programs at eBay, we also have a lean-in circle, so kind of based off of Sheryl Sandberg's work for our non-exempt or our hourly population. So we have a large call center here. And allowing them the opportunity to have peer-related, as well as then offer them some training, so which is kind of a unique circumstance for most call centers.
And it kind of related to this topic of, kind of women in career development and maybe women not being as comfortable speaking up and saying what they want. Any tips or tricks for extracting information from an employee as managers? Clearly this is important for male and female employees, but particularly with women. Are there techniques that you've used to really kind of clear away maybe the surface conversation that you're having and go deep and really get a female employee to open up and speak her mind?
One thing we talk about is competence versus confidence, and we feel that women, before they feel the confidence to raise their hand or ask a question, they feel like they have to have competence. And so we teach them that it's okay for you to be the person in the room that doesn't know, that raises their hand, that asks the question, that you don't have to have 100% competence before you can be confident. And that is something that we teach over and over, especially our junior population. And then you have to be that example too. You have to be that female in that room that is not afraid to raise your hand and ask the question that may seem stupid to someone else, but probably half of the room was thinking the same thing. So it's important that we have the junior population of women see us that have been around a longer period of time, put ourselves out there, be vulnerable, ask the questions, and hopefully they can follow as well. And then when you are the one leading the discussion in the room, don't be afraid to engage women in the room as well. Ask them, don't put them in an uncomfortable situation, but say, what is your opinion? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And another thing is listen to conversations happening around and be perceptive, right? So if stuff is happening, hallway chatter, whatnot, bring it up with your employees and see if it's something that involves them or they have a concern about, or basically you bring it up. Don't wait for them to come to you, and that should help alleviate. And also, absolutely what you said too, just be that person.
Yeah, I think it's so critical for us as leaders to help bring people along and to really give them the space and freedom to do that. And I'll give a quick example. I worked at Visa in San Francisco many years ago, and there was a gal I worked with, and she was being deposed. Visa got sued a lot. And so the deposition was going. It was 2 male attorneys. She was on the stand, and it was kind of coming up close to the time, and they said, and the men attorney said, well, we're really getting into it. It would be great if we could keep going. And at first, my friend Melissa said, sure, but she looked over at the stenographer, who just kind of meekly raised her hand and said, I can stay, I just need 5-10 minutes to get some child care covered. And both of the attorneys were like, oh, And so Melissa said, you know what, I'm busy. I have to come back tomorrow. And that's what you need.
Nice. One thing I'll offer up, just because I feel like often when I would come to events like this, I'm always looking to steal some great idea that somebody had about, how to be a better leader or communicator. And I definitely stole this one from a CEO group I had. But essentially what I would do at every one-on-one with all of my the employees that I would meet with is, instead of starting our one-on-ones with immediately jumping through an agenda and a list of topics, which, as I'm sure many of the women in the room can appreciate, as women we are really, really good at. We've got our list, we've got our agenda, we're ready to hammer through it. I would pause and say, we're not going to go through the agenda. First, we're going to start every one of our one-on-ones, and I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and you're going to rate your satisfaction, if you will, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very satisfied, 1 being I'm not happy, I'm unsatisfied. And I would start by saying, all right, here we go, scale of 1 to 10. How's your health? How's your family? How are your peers and your team that you work with? And then finally, how's the business doing? And inevitably, through asking those 4 questions, something would be revealed to me, right? Something that would not naturally come up in an agenda. something that an employee probably wouldn't feel comfortable telling me. So, they'd sit down, they'd be happy, they'd have their list of things to go through, and it turned out that their family number was a 2. And I'd say, well, whoa, wait, why is your family a 2? And then I'd understand that, they have maybe an at-home issue, or their peer number would be a 4, and that would be their way of introducing to me the idea or the realization that they were unhappy with their peer group or their employees. So it's something that worked really, really well for me. I actually kept it all in a spreadsheet, and I could actually track my employees' kind of happiness along those 4 dimensions. But it let me have a personal conversation with the people that worked with me outside of just the list of agenda items that we had to go through.
I'm so stealing that.
Yeah. It was like, bro, I stole it from somebody, so that's why I wanted to pass it on to you guys. It was a really, really awesome way of getting to know people that work for me on a personal level and extracting information you otherwise wouldn't get.
Love it.
Okay, so last question for you guys. There's a few men in the room, which is really great. Actually, I think the WTC was impressed and excited about the number of men that attended today's session. So the question is around engaging senior men, and why is it important, and how do you engage senior men in this conversation of getting more women into technology companies and into leadership roles?
You want to start?
Sure. Look at the numbers, right? Like, look at your numbers and say, if it's equal, awesome. More likely than not, I think in today's society that those numbers aren't going to be equal. So you can look at those and say, we've got work to do, right? So how do we do that? It's got to come from executive level on down. Here, we've got a great atmosphere that our CEO is totally on board. The SVPs are all on board, and they're doing what they need to do. We wouldn't have an inclusion council if they weren't on board. So make sure that they understand that how a diverse workforce actually helps them drive more revenue. It helps them be more successful. So once you get them involved and on board, then go for it. And it could even start grassroots style too. If you get a group of people who have something that they feel strongly about, get it going. I mean, that's how a lot of our networks have started here at Adobe, is just getting a few employees who feel very passionately about a cause and jumping on board and creating networking lunches for women or different things like that.
Yeah, I think we would say ours started kind of that grassroots, and now it's probably 50-50, kind of looking for head nods in our group, but it's probably close to 50-50 men and women who show up. In our Dublin site, they're going to rename it just diversity and inclusion so that people know that it's really open versus that it's specifically about women. So
I would say that our men have been champions to all of our women initiatives. We have men that are part of our women's network, which is very, very important. And then be ready when men at Goldman Sachs come to me and they say, Diane, what can I do? How can I get involved? You have to be ready and have an action plan and say, this is what you can do. Or let me teach you these things, or let me coach you through this situation. I think that's important. I would say most men want to be involved. A lot of times they just don't know how to be involved. We just have to teach them and train them and get them there.
Great. Okay, well, I think that's time. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you.